Hello everyone, and welcome back to The Everyday Runner, the official channel of the running website.com, and today we have an interesting video for you guys. I'm going to be ranking the top running shoe companies from S tier all the way down to D tier, so we're going to do this video game style, and I think it's going to be interesting. So without further ado, let's get into it. And just a quick disclaimer, guys. I know you guys are going to get offended by my ranking, but I just want you to know this is just an objective ranking. This isn't my opinion. This is just straight up facts. So get over it. No, I'm kidding. Of course, guys, this is just my opinion. So let us know down in the comments what you think of this listing. All right, guys, we're going to go from D tier to S tier. Obviously, D tier is the lowest one, and S tier is the highest. So starting off with D tier, we have the first brand, Mizuno. Now, if you're like me, I forgot Mizuno even made running shoes. I know they were kind of popular back in the day with the Wave Runners and all that kind of stuff. I don't know if they still make them. They're D tier for sure. Next on the list is Under Armour. Now, I will say they did just sign Morgan McDonald, so that's definitely a positive that they got going for them, but they never really make a splash in the running world. They don't have any great shoes, any standout shoes, so D tier for sure. Next, this is a hard one I put on here, Reebok. Now, Reebok does have some good runners. They have Martin Heher, which we've interviewed, by the way, so go head over to therunningwebsite.com and check out our interview with Marty. Great guy. But other than him, I mean, really, they don't have any great shoes. I know they have the Float Ride, Run Fast, which I tried recently. Good shoes, but overall, they're just not. They're not top of mind when I think of running shoe companies. So D tier for sure. Next is Puma. Apparently they made a racer, but I haven't really seen much about it. Obviously they're very top tier when it comes to sprinting. Usain Bolt, obviously, big athlete. They have a lot of Jamaican athletes, a lot of other great athletes, but I mean, when it comes to running, distance running, which is more what this is focusing on, not a big player. Next would be Vibram. I mean, when was the last time we saw someone running in a Vibram, however you say it, shoe? Definitely a phase, and that phase is over. Will it make a comeback? I don't know, but right now, D tier. And lastly, I honestly forgot this was a company, is Newton. They were kind of a big deal back really when I was in like middle school, early high school, with their like energy rods, whatever it was in the shoe. But nowadays, I don't really know anyone that runs in these anymore. So D tier for sure. All right, so that rounds out the D tier. So moving up to C tier, so one above D, still not great, but better than D, of course, is, and I think this is going to surprise a lot of you, is Adidas. Now this is probably going to spark some controversy, but here's my reasoning, is I think they've really dropped the ball with their running shoes as a whole. Now I will say the Adidas Adizero Pro, that shoe has obviously been making its rounds with world records and a lot of great athletes wearing it. But other than that shoe, I mean, what do they really have that people wear? I mean, they have like the Boost series, but I think Boost is just kind of outdated now. They need to find a different foam. Boost is just too heavy. And another reason I put them in C tier is because they have very confusing shoe names, specifically the SL series. I think Kofuzi actually made a video recently kind of calling this out, where on their website, they just changed the numbers or the name, and it's just different or just different colors, and it's just really confusing as to whether or not it's a new shoe or if it's not. So Adidas, you're C tier for now. Get your act together. All right, next is Ultra. Now, I know Ultra has a very dedicated cult following almost, and it's more on the trail side of things. And I think it's cool that they're all zero drop, but really not a massive player in the world of distance running. I know they're pretty big on the trail side of things, but no standout shoes, no crazy athletes or anything like that. So C tier. All right, next is Skechers. Now I will say, just starting out, that Skechers has surprised me over the years. I never really had worn any of their shoes until recently. I've tried some, and they actually have surprised me in terms of the overall quality of them. But not really a big player in the field. They do have their, super shoe line sort of with the carbon plated racer, but no one really wears those. But they do have some good athletes like Edward Cheserek. So they got something going for them. And the last C tier I have here is On Running. And so they've started to have a pretty good presence in the running world. They're starting to sign some professional athletes, but they really haven't done much yet. And they don't have a standout racing shoe. They have some good trainers, but overall, they're just not a huge player. They're a small company, which I think is the biggest reason why they're C right now. But I could see over the years them kind of moving up the ranks a little bit. So that closes it out for C tier. So on to B tier. So this is tier number 3. The first shoe company I have in the B tier is Salomon. Now, I'll be honest, I don't know a lot about Salomon, but I do know that they make very high quality shoes and clothing, and they aim their stuff towards very dedicated trail runners. I know Seth James Damore and other running YouTubers talk about Salomon and hold them to a very high degree. Their shoes look like they're very high quality. And they have recently done some big events like the 24-hour run. They have Kilian Jornet, or Jornet, however you say his name. So they're definitely up there, but overall not a huge splash in the entire running world. They're more on the trail side of things. Another B tier company would be Brooks. They've had some standout shoes recently with the Hyperion Tempo, Hyperion Elite 2, but they haven't done anything crazy. They have some consistent hitters like the Launch, the Adrenaline, the Ghost line, so just consistent performers, but they just haven't done anything, I think, insane in the recent years. But they're consistent, and they're consistently okay, so that's why they're B tier. And last in the B tier is Asics, and I would say Asics was becoming irrelevant for a good while there. I remember when I first started running, I wore the Asics gel shoes, but then they really weren't doing much, and Asics kind of drifted to the back of my mind in terms of popular running shoe companies. But I think they came back within recent years with the Glide Ride and the Nova Blast, and now it seems like they're going to be releasing a new carbon-plated racer, like the one Sarah Hall wore recently. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how that works out when it's released, and I think that could bump them up to potentially A tier. But right now, I would say they're B tier, especially because they're pretty much non-existent in the track world. No great track spikes or anything like that, so B tier for sure. And then the last company in B tier, and this is one that I think, I love this company, and I love everything they're doing, and I think they will truly be in A tier soon, and that's Atreyu. So I'm sure you guys have heard of Atreyu, but if you haven't at this point, it's a new running shoe company that works on a subscription model. So you put your name and email, and you pay for your shoes on a subscription basis. They send you a new pair every few months or whatever. I think you can choose different time frames to get new shoes. But they're a new brand. They're changing things up, which I definitely respect. They have very simple designs, and they don't break your bank with their prices. So they keep it simple, keep it easy, but they haven't been proven yet. They've only been out for maybe like a couple years now. So it's just too early for me to call, but I think they're going in the right direction. And I think a company that's comparable to them that we'll get to in a second here is Hoka. Hoka was, kind of paving their own path with a high stack height and, focusing on the trail side, but also having, road running shoes. And I can see this company kind of going down the same path where they're carving out something new and they're going to create something great. So that closes it out for the B tier. So now on to the A tier. We are getting to the upper echelon of running shoe companies. So the first company in here is New Balance. So New Balance has made a substantial comeback over the previous years. I remember the first time I ever ran New Balance shoes, they were awful back when I was in middle school, so several years ago. And Fuel Cell has gotten much better, and they've dialed in the new Fresh Foam X, like in the Fresh Foam More 2 and 3 and the 1080V 10 and 11. Great shoes, way better than they were before. And then with new shoes like the Beacon and their new racing lines, they're definitely, they got a whole line going where they're really getting in the swing of things. Now, the only reason they're not in S tier is because they don't really have an updated spike lineup. Now, I know they have the MD and the LDs, and those are good spikes, but compared to some of the spikes that are coming out, I just don't think that they're there yet. But if they had that, I think they would be pretty close to an S tier. The next company I have in the A tier is Saucony. So Saucony also has made a bit of a comeback. I ran them in the early days of my running, and they were always, like a running brand. Real runners wore this brand, but they became kind of stagnant over time. But with the Endorphin line specifically, they've just been killing it. The Endorphin Speed, Endorphin Pro, obviously, Endorphin Shift, all those shoes, amazing shoes, very, very popular. And, with athletes like Jared Ward, Parker Stinson, those guys really paving the way for them. And I think, they've definitely made a comeback, and they're a serious threat now. All right, and then possibly one of my favorite companies on this list is Hoka One One. And just an amazing company. They opened a new sector of running shoes, really, with the high stack height, sort of focusing on the trail side, but also having good road shoes. So many classics like the Clifton, the Speed Goat, the new Carbon series. And they sponsor cool athletes like Jim Walmsley. And I think they just add diversity to the sport of running. Like Jim's a great example. A trail runner runs 100-mile races, runs ridiculous weekly mileage, but also comes out and runs the Olympic trials and the marathon. It's just crazy. Not a lot of companies have those kind of people. So Hoka is pretty sweet, but they have a lack in terms of the track side. But they definitely carved a new path and definitely earned that A tier spot. All right, guys, we finally made it to the S tier, and now this is like the creme de la creme, the place that you want to be as a running shoe company. And there is only one single company that, in my opinion, which is actually a fact, qualifies for the S tier. And that company is, you may have guessed it by now, Nike. So I know Nike is a controversial brand. People get upset about Nike and things like that. But there's one thing you can't deny, and it's that they have done so much for the sport of running. Love them or hate them, they've released amazing shoes. They have great events. They sponsor amazing athletes. They really bring so much to the table when it comes to running. And I really don't think distance running or even sprinting, track and field in general would be where it is without Nike. So they have amazing shoes, like all the ones the Alphafly, the Vaporflies lines. They have the new track spikes. They have the Pegasus, the Vomero. They're always trying to push that envelope to have better shoes for their athletes, better shoes for their customers. And they always have these events like the Nike Cross Nationals, the Breaking 2 project. They were part of the Ineos 159. They really just push the limits of running and try to get running on the forefront of sporting. And I think without them, running would be in a very different place. And now, obviously, they've had their ups and downs. They've gone through some tough times with their athletes and with certain allegations against them and their coaches, which we don't need to get into that. But love them or hate them, I think at the end of the day, you have to recognize that they do more for the sport of running than any other company. And their shoes, right now, their racing shoes are on top of the world. I mean, you have the Adizero Pro coming along, but until that one came along, it's been Alphafly, Vaporfly, 4% all day, and no one has challenged them. And now with their new release of the Dragonfly and the new Zoom Victories, no one's touching them. No one's got the consistency as them. And they've just been killing it. I'm not trying to go on a Nike, not rant, but praise session with them. But I really do think they are an S tier company, and the only one of the major brands out there that deserves to be an S tier. All right, guys, so that's my list of the top running companies. Let me know what you think. I'm sure we don't agree on everything that's on this list. So if you have different opinions on where these companies should be ranked, definitely leave a comment below. I'd love to read all of them. It's super interesting to hear people's different opinions. And I think these companies will be moving around over the years. I think New Balance and a lot of those other A companies could be S's with just adding some track spikes or something like that to their lineup. And I think a lot of these companies with these super shoes, they just haven't been on enough athletes' feet for them to be proven as an equal or even better option to the Nike super shoe line. So it'll be interesting. It's going to be sweet to see kind of where things end up in the coming years. But anyways, guys, thank you for watching. We really appreciate it. Go head over to our website at therunningwebsite.com for more running content, including things about shoes and interviews with professional runners and medical professionals. And as always, from one everyday runner to another, we'll see you next time.